Hello again, everybody. Welcome to OC Varsity for our OC Varsity Gridiron Show. Steve Fryer here with Dan Albano. We're taking a look every week here at the big games of the week. The game of the week is Santa Margaret and Mission Viejo. We'll get to that a little bit later. But first of all, let's talk about Mater Dei, number one in the county, in the state, in the Western Hemisphere, whatever else. They're going to go to Bishop Gorman, which is not played a game yet.
Yes, the Gales have season opener for the Gales.
Last week, Mater Dei beat Bishop Amat 42-14. That's a 28-point margin. Last year, Mater Dei beat Amat by 24. I don't know if that means anything. They're going to actually be as good or better as last year's national championship team. But they had a heck of a game, rushed for 369 yards and rushed for 6 touchdowns. Jacoby Harper and Sean Dollars, both over 100 yards, Dan. Mater Dei beat Gorman last year, ended Bishop Gorman's 55-game winning streak.
Right.
Gorman 10-time state champion.
Yes.
They've got all kinds of guys. A Stanford commit at defensive back, K.U. Kelly,
Yes.
an offensive lineman, Bo Taylor, going to UCLA. They got guys all over the
Yes.
place. A new quarterback, Micah Bowens, only threw 25 passes last year, so they got a new quarterback. This game's at Bishop Gorman. What's your breakdown on this one, Dan?
Well, I think Mater Dei can get the win. I think it's going to be tough because one that's going to be pretty hot. It's going to be really hot, potentially at that 6 o'clock kickoff. It's also going to be a national game. It's going to motivate Mater Dei to show well.
ESPN News on that one.
To show well. It's not so much like a rivalry game like the Bosco games, but it's more of a chance for Mater Dei to show what the national champions are about. But they're going to have to overcome the heat, and then a hungry team in Gorman who's going to want to play well at home. Probably been aiming for this game. But I think Mater Dei has been preparing well for it. During the summer, Coach Rollinson mentioned conditioning. They had some workouts in the heat specifically for this game.
How could they avoid that this summer?
I know, but they practiced at some hours that I was like, really? And they
We're going out at 1 p.m., Albano.
They did. So and he's been talking about the desert. So and I think Mater Dei will have more of their full arsenal of players as well. And they probably have a little bit more balance maybe in the passing attack with Bryce Young, and Bishop Gorman trying to replace Dorian Thompson, who's at now at UCLA, looking great there. So, but they're going to have to in the defense. We'll have to, Gorman's got Mater Dei's defense is going to have to deal with Ragsdale is a very good running back, Division I type running back that Gorman has. So
yeah, I hear they got 10 D1 dudes. Woo!
Well, that's about what Mater Dei probably has.
Yeah,
or
good
more.
call.
Yep.
Good point. Centennial Corona is coming out here to Orange County to play Orange Lutheran. Both these teams are ranked in the state. Centennial's number 4 in California. Orange Lutheran is number 5 in the state right now. Centennial rotated quarterbacks last week in a win over, at the time, number 10 in the nation, Chandler of Arizona.
Yeah.
A guy named Ala Mikaeli and Carter Friedland shared a quarterback. They won 35-13 over Chandler, so that rotating quarterback thing is doing pretty well for them. Junior wide receiver Gary Bryant Jr. had 9 catches for 265 yards. Lancers better keep an eye on that guy.
Yeah.
And then Ryan Holinsky played really well in Orange Lutheran's 27-7 win over Orange Lutheran. Threw the ball Dan Fouts like 49 times, completed 28 of them, 295 yards, 3 touchdowns, spread out the receptions all over the field. So it looks like a really good challenge for Orange Lutheran. We expect them to beat San Juan Hills. What do you think their chances are, Dan, against Centennial of Corona coming out here?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I was kind of surprised and perplexed that Olu did not beat San Juan Hills by more. I looked at the 20 points, and I was 27 points. I expected Olu to score more and to win by more. So maybe they were holding back in anticipation of this game. It's a much difficult opponent, and credit to San Juan Hills, but my thinking is that maybe they were holding back. But Olu's also got some things to work on. Holinsky was sacked 3 times against San Juan Hills, and one of the strengths of this Corona Centennial team is their defense, their front 7. They have an Oregon commit at defensive end. They have 2 really good defensive ends, and the Stallions were able to pressure Holinsky as well. I mean, there's other times they sacked him or they pressured him about 5 times. So the offensive line is going to have to play better. So I'm wondering what we'll find out about Olu. Were they holding something back against San Juan Hills, or do they really have to work on protecting Helinski better, because that was one of their things, going back to last year, where they at times struggled to protect Helinski enough. It's going to be a very telling game, huge game in Division One.
Our game of the week, Santa Margarita at Mission Viejo. That's Friday, 7 o'clock game. All these games are Friday games. Santa Margarita's number 12 in the state. I think Mission's number 7 in the state right now. Mission comes off a 34-10 win over Liberty of Bakersfield. Mr. Everything, Keely Arnold returns a kickoff, opening kickoff, actually an interception, 95 yards for a touchdown on Liberty's first possession. Jamari Farrell had a nice comeback, good kid who got injured last year. 65-yard touchdown run. Joey Yellen, pretty good, 225 yards, a pair of touchdowns. Santa Margarita, the young sophomore quarterback, Peter Castelli, 23 of 29, 325 yards, 6 touchdowns. Jake Thomas, little guy, tough guy, 120 yards rushing. Chase Nanad had 8 catches. Man, they looked really good last week, and their win over Downey, which was a Division IV finalist last year. Geez, Dan, this looks like a coin flip game to me. Mission Viejo beat Santa Margarita the last pair of years that they've played them. I think Santa Margarita is a little bit better than they were those last 2 years.
That's saying something too, because they graduated, some really good players. Chad Magyar, among others.
Good running back.
They lost some other. They had a couple of Division I guys running around there last year too. And what Santa Margarita returned was offensive line strength, physicality. My podcast
maybe
partner,
questions on defense, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then they were pretty good against Downey.
Right.
But it's going to be basically, for me, this matchup, it's a whole different ball game, where you have Castelli, a sophomore quarterback. Now he's going to really encounter a good Mission Viejo defense.
Right.
They have defensive coordinator Brett Payton, who's going to dial up some pressure. They have, the Diablos have a real good junior defensive end, Lance Kennelly, who had a sack, last week against Liberty. Then you have Sir Barnes at linebacker, and then that secondary with Keely Arnold, like you mentioned, JoJo Forrest, and Mission Viejo is usually very sophisticated with their defense, how they scheme things and zone and man and pressure. So this is going to be a big telling effort. How good are the Diablos taking on the Trinity League team? We know last year Mission, they beat Olu in the Division I quarterfinals. They lost to Mater Dei in the semis. Can they do it again? I know they really Division I contenders, and is SM really taking the next step? My podcast partner Scotty Brajas, he thinks that they have really showing this year already in that just first game that they feel like they've taken another step with Rich Fisher, where they've turned over a lot with graduation, and they're staying consistently with that effort, and if not better, that they really made another step. And if they got this victory, then it would show that that program has taken a step and gotten by a South County nemesis.
Well, we're going to see what happens in that game and the other games too. Mater Dei, Bishop Gorman, Centennial and Orange Lutheran, a lot of other games. We're going to preview those all week long here at OC Varsity. So thanks for joining us again.